I'm really happy to be introducing the film this week, Mike Leigh's Secrets and Lies. The reason I love it so much is because I think it's one of the great examples of humanitarian filmmaking, or it's humanism. It doesn't have any villains. It has people that are fraught with unhappiness. It basically deals with, the circumstances and the basic, if you make mistakes early in life, there are consequences, and it deals with those consequences. But what it does is it develops people that are so real, they are so genuine, and they're so human that it does surprise you a bit. We wish we had more films like this. And I would say that one of the ways that these performances become so genuine and real is the way that Mike really works with his actors, which is very unusual, not like another director. He started with the BBC very early, making these small, I would call them even elaborate home movies that were comedies in which he would develop for about maybe months beforehand. He would get the actors together and he would often work with them separately, and he would basically ask them all sorts of questions. They would think about their characters. They would maybe improvise scenes about what their character would do in any kind of situation. He worked often even 2 months, 3 months before he ever arrived at filming. By the time he arrived there, he had the material for his film so that he could actually create his scripts and have the actors follow the lines in the scripts. It led to some misunderstandings about the way he worked, because early on, I remember a number of critics that basically were talking about how improvisation became a dominant force in his films and that he would improvise even during filming, which is not true. By the time he got to making the film, he was making a genuine film that he had scripted. But because of the way he worked with his actors and because they came across as so genuine and so free, it led critics to almost think that he must be using improvisation. This continued all the way, especially into Secrets and Lies, because Secrets and Lies has a performance from its main actress, Blenda Blethyn, which is one of the great performances in film. And there is a moment in which she meets the daughter that she never realized she had, and they meet in a cafe, and it's this long, protracted scene of about 8 minutes. It's one of the most brilliant in film. I consider it such a masterpiece that you may return to it again and again to be astonished and to enjoy the extraordinary things that happen in that scene. But by the time they got to filming that, he had worked with both actresses for a good long time, for months improvising, for months, letting them so thoroughly absorb their characters that then what they did in those 8 minutes came quite naturally to them. It is that kind of realism that his films have that most filmmakers do not have. Now, he also has chosen very unorthodox subject matter. His films almost fall into, the kinds of films that he makes films about people that you don't really see on films very much. He appreciated the lower class, working class people. He makes them very human in his films. And in this particular film, most of the people are from the working class. One of the brothers has made a success of a photography business, and of course, then the protagonist that comes into the film is the daughter that the mother discovers that she has, who is black, and the black woman is an optician. She works in, she's a eye doctor, and she's the most elevated of all the people in the film. This is the way that he constantly switches around our expectations, and he builds a kind of structure around things that we are unfamiliar with. It's also the intimate details that you learn about people's lives. These details have been developed in a very real way that gives them an authenticity that you don't get in many films. His later films all have dealt with subject matter that is controversial or a bit strange, and his late masterpiece, which I think is one of the finest films, is called Turner. This is a film about the painter, the English painter. But the way he handles that is so unorthodox that most people that are, academicians, they're intellectuals, they're in colleges and stuff, they would hate it. How could you show somebody so uncouth or so ridiculous? And yet he follows absolutely the autobiographical and biographical details of Turner's life. Turner was a very difficult character. And Mike Leigh loves difficult characters. That's one of the things that typifies his great filmmaking. I was very lucky to actually meet Mike Leigh very early in his career. He came to San Francisco and I interviewed him for a radio station, and I took him to lunch and we had a great conversation. He was absolutely so gracious. He was so intelligent, and he basically always talked not in terms of film, but in terms of life. And I think that is what separates his films from almost all the other English films that we have at this time. They are vastly humanist, they are about real people, and they are about life. I think you will enjoy Secrets and Lies because it also is about these subject matters in rather marvelous contexts.